I don't want. What's the business, y'all? This is Josh Jones, ESQ, also known as the Dope Black Lawyer. We're here for another episode of Law and Hip Hop. I don't want to wait too long. It's the late night edition. Usually we do it in the daytime. Tonight we're doing it a little bit later. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, still a little early on the West Coast. So before we get too far, like I said, this is a Law and Hip Hop podcast. So everything that we do here is to kind of explain the law, talk about legal issues that affect the culture, affect hip hop community, and things that you won't necessarily see on the news or things that don't get as much coverage as other things. Um, so, the stories that you see here are things that obviously are impacting the culture. So I want to make sure that we can talk about it, break it down. If you ever have anything that you want to know about, you can always ask. Before we go into the first story, I just want to say, let us know where you watch it from. Rep your city, rep your HBCU. Let us know who your pastor is, whatever it is that you want to let us know, so we can kind of get into it. All right. So the first story that we're talking about tonight is a sad one. Unfortunately, there was a man in Mississippi, Rasheem Carter, who was found dead. Some really weird facts, but the police have found that there was no foul play. So I'm just going to show a short clip about the story. Let's see if I can get that shared for you.
From his body, his vertebrae, his spinal cord was in another spot they discovered away from his severed head. They have recently found remains that they believe are also Rasheem Carter.
Carter was last seen outside a Super 8 hotel at the beginning of October in Laurel, which is half an hour from where he had been contracted to work in Taylorsville at Georgia Pacific. Remains believed to be his were found on November 2nd. Those close to Carter say he was being threatened by people he knew.
He was dutifully and gainfully employed, just trying to make a living for his young child, and ends up dead, chased by what we believe to be white supremacists, a lynch mob.
So, as you can see there, the family of Rasheem is represented by two dope black lawyers, Benjamin Crump, who pretty much everybody at this point probably has seen in the news, unfortunately, way too much, because when you see Ben, you know that somebody was probably killed by the police or some type of civil rights issue. And then also Carlos Moore, who's actually the president of the Black Lawyers Association, a very good lawyer in the state of Mississippi. Unfortunately, he's not a member of Omega Psi Phi like me and Ben, but he is a great lawyer. But getting into the story is strange. You know, they found his body all over the place in different locations. His body had been scavenged over by animals, and even after he went missing, they found his credit card had been tried to use. They tried to use his credit card, which is kind of like a pretty good sign in my eyes that there was some kind of foul play going on. His mother already had been warned, if something happens, you know, there's people that are after me. And, you know, even with all of this to go along with it, the police and the medical examiners and everyone who investigated it in Mississippi found no foul play. Obviously, you know, we all know Mississippi has a reputation going all the way back to, you know, slavery and civil rights, you know, Emmett Till, everything, of being a place where, you know, bad things happen. There's a big black population, but it's a lot of, you know, injustice, a lot of white people as well who are not here for us and are, you know, here are actually doing things to hurt us because they hate us, unfortunately. So I do have good faith that Ben and Carlos will get to the bottom of what's going on out there and get some justice for that family. Very, very sad, tragic story out there. Also, a tragic story, but one with a good ending. Ben Crump was also involved in this story, but probably about a year ago, if you remember, there was a black teenager who was in Orlando, and he got on a ride, one of those rides that goes way up in the air and then drops you down. and unfortunately, he was crushed. The teen was about almost 400 pounds, and the ride said that the weight limit was about 250 pounds or so. So, there's a lot of things that happened that shouldn't have happened in that situation. Um, but Ben and some of the other lawyers working on that case with Ben were able to get a settlement for that family. But more importantly, they were able to get that ride um, taken off the amusement park. So they actually got rid of the ride, and there is a law passed stating that rides that go more than 100 feet in the air will now require safety devices. There were, seat belts and things like that. There were no seat belts. So very sad story, but one with a little bit of redemption for the mother. She stated she had never been to Florida, but now she's able to get a little bit of justice. She hates to have to come under these circumstances, but there is a little bit of redemption for that family. So still condolences for the family of Tyree Sampson, 14-year-old teen. And let me see if I can post this picture up just to kind of maybe give you a visual.
Action at seeing the ride up close.
It's breathtaking. It's not in a good way. It's my son took his last breath on this ride, so it's heartbreaking, devastating. It's a feeling that I hope no parent will ever have to go through after this ride comes down.
During that news conference, the attorney for the Sampson family announced a settlement with the owner of Freefall, Orlando Eagle Drop Slingshot, and Icon Park, which was leasing the property for the ride to operate. The settlement amount not given, but the attorney explained that they are still going.
So yeah, so they didn't. The settlement was confidential, but what it did seem like was that the people who ran the park and who were responsible took responsibility and were working with their insurance company to try to come to some type of resolution for the family. You don't always see that. A lot of times you'll see situations where things happen and the defendants or the people who caused that harm will try to make excuses or try to delay and blame the victim in the situation. So I do think that is a positive in that case where they did the right thing for Tyree and his family. Another story that was in the news this week was involving Nipsey Hussle. He was kind of back in the news. There are a couple of different things that came up with regard to his trust. So his oldest daughter and her mother his oldest daughter's mother was having issues with the trust, trying to make sure that the oldest daughter would still be a part of the family and that everything will work. Luckily, there is a trust, so the trust kind of outlines what's going to happen. And when they have the dispute, they can just go to the court with the trust, and everything that Nipsey would have wanted will be, in writing, and they'll be able to kind of deal with it that way. Also, for those who don't listen to the Earn Your Leisure podcast or watch their YouTube channel, Nipsey's older brother, Black Sam, was on there with some of the other guys from their company, and he was able to, and they talked about the trust and how right before Nipsey was killed in front of his store, that they were able to start a partnership with Puma, and Puma actually has continued to put money into the trust every year for Nipsey's children. So that's a good thing. A lot of times, once the artist or whoever is not able to produce or provide for the company, you don't see them, stepping up to still provide for the artist. So that is cool that Puma is still doing that. It is something to take into consideration, how they treat their, talent that they sign to endorsement deals. I've only worn Adidas for the last, 25 years probably, but if I can't find black sneakers to wear, black-owned sneaker company to support I may consider rocking some Pumas, just for how they do business and, honor the legacy of Black people who have made them money. So that's pretty cool as well. So shout out to Nipsey, his family, and all of them for being forward thinking and creating that trust, and to Puma as well. Another another story that is something that you don't hear about all the time, but there was a Black couple, and they sued, claiming that their home was appraised for a lower value um, than what it was worth. What they did was they got a white family to pretend that as if it was their home, and the white family actually got a higher appraisal value. So obviously, the higher your house appraises for, the more you're going to be able to make from the sale of your home. So they were lowballed. They filed a lawsuit, and they were successful in getting a settlement for their lawsuit. So this happened out in California, but these things happen all over the country. Where Black people in Black neighborhoods, the homes are appraised for lower values, and it affects everything, including your ability to create that generational wealth that you're looking for, because you have less money, obviously, right? So with less money, you have less options, and you're unable to fulfill whatever it is that you want to do for your family. So like I said, this happened out in Marin City, which is close to San Francisco. Actually, that's the area where Pac relocated to when he went out to the West Coast. So it's actually like a kind of like a historically Black community. So so this family bought a house out in Cali, and when they decided to sell it, the sales value that they were given was $995,000. And then, later on, the home got an appraisal with the white family for $1.45 million. So it's a big difference there. So it's not just a little bit. We're not talking about like 100,000 versus 120,000. We're talking about significant dollars. So this family out in Cali was able to sue and allege that they were treated differently based on their race, and they were able to get a settlement because I'm sure they had evidence to show kind of what the evidence that they needed to show that their case would be successful in court. So it's obviously important to make sure that you go out, talk to a lawyer early, because the lawyer is going to be the one who's going to be able to tell you exactly how to gather that evidence and what to do. A different type of it was an employment discrimination case, but not too long ago, I had a young man. He called me, and he was working in a supermarket, and he was saying that he was being discriminated against, and it was based on race. And he decided to listen to his dad. His dad told him, "You need to quit before you get fired." And you don't want to get fired. You don't want to have that on your record, but you're still going to try to sue this grocery store for discrimination. Well, unfortunately, listening to a non-lawyer about how to handle a situation when you want to take legal action will hurt you. By not getting fired, or not being, having his hours cut, or whatever the case is, he chose to leave and separate from that job, and it affects how much he could actually receive for that case. So he ended up not really having a case because he quit instead of letting the whole situation play out for him. So obviously that's a lesson for him, and I wanted to be a lesson for you, so you don't have to put your hand on the stove and get burned yourself. You could just know that before I take any action, I need to call a dope Black lawyer who could help me. So just want to put that out there for everybody. And now, it's March Madness. So last week we were talking about the number 1 seed in Alabama, from University of Alabama, and the situation they had where one of the players was arrested and indicted for murder. And the star player, probably will be a top 5 NBA pick, was also a part of the investigation. So we're going to stick to that basketball theme this week. It's another crazy story involving a former NBA player who now has a very popular podcast. And we don't do this. I just want to say this. We don't do this to gossip, because I'm not really about the gossip, but I really want to be able to kind of like educate people about what's going on. So Matt Barnes, he has a podcast, and a show. Actually, the podcast is televised on Showtime, so it's a big deal. It's not a little show. He was a really good player, supporting role player for a lot of years in the NBA, and he ended up being married to one of the young ladies from the show Basketball Wives. So that's where it kind of gets to be like kind of gossipy in itself, right? So their marriage didn't work out. They had a few kids, and now he is being ordered to pay this woman Gloria Govan more than $133,000 in back child support for payments that weren't made. So he was paying $20,000 a month. The child support was dropped to $7,500 a month, but he hasn't been paying it. So it's $133,000 that he owes. So it's kind of a crazy situation because she's actually also being sued for the same divorce case by her lawyers who helped her to get this, child support order and helped with the divorce and all that stuff. So they're saying that she owes them almost $200,000. She owes them $197K, according to some other reports and things that were found in the Superior Court of California, Los Angeles Superior Court of California's docket. So, that's crazy. They talked about how she had to be located and served, which is normal, but she failed to respond, which we talked about last week. If you don't respond, then pretty much whatever the other side is alleging is, deemed to be true, and they can get a judgment against you just because you didn't respond. So even if whether you think you're guilty, not guilty of whatever is you're being accused of in a civil case, you definitely want to respond. Obviously, in a criminal case, you're going to have to respond. But in a civil case where it's something involving money or property or some type of injunction, like you want to respond. Otherwise, your side won't get heard and the other side will be found to be true. So, it's just kind of weird. It's just like a whole web. So also, Matt Barnes is being sued by his now fiance's former husband because somehow, I don't know how it happens, but stuff happens. Somehow they ended up at a football game. Excuse me. They ended up at a football game in San Francisco, and ran into each other, supposedly random, and they had an altercation. So there's all types of allegations about children being treated differently based on, if they're like the step kids or, the other one's kids. So they don't like each other, obviously. And there's a video where it shows Matt Barnes spit on the guy. And Matt Barnes actually was the one who asked for the restraining order. And then now the guy's suing him. So it's a crazy story, but everybody has these situations. It's kind of just like domestic, familial, the people who you're closest to are the people who you're going to have conflicts with. That's why, they talk about black on black crime, but white on white crime and Asian on Asian crime and all Latin on Latin crime, all of the numbers are going to trend in the same direction where people are committing crimes against the people who are in their community because that's who they're around the most. It kind of makes sense. But the only thing that really gets highlighted as being any type of serious issue is black on black crime, which is kind of not really even a thing. But we don't have to talk about that today. But I just really kind of just want to mention, whenever you have these domestic situations where, things get out of control, it's really easy for people to lose their tempers or to lose their cool because, it builds up. So it just builds, it builds, it builds. You keep seeing these people and what do? But when you're in a situation, and it's not even just if you're a celebrity, because obviously if you're the host of a top podcast, you already have a high net worth from, making, really, really good money playing basketball at a high level. You don't want to, jeopardize your ability to make your income. But it's even more important when you didn't make millions of dollars playing basketball for a lot of years, right? So like if you make $40,000, $50,000 a year, $15, $20 an hour, like, do you really want to be in a situation where you're not able to earn income for your family because you allow for your temper to boil over. And now you have to, hire lawyers, or you have to go through all these legal proceedings, and you got to take time off from your job. It's too much time, so they fire you, or they have a zero tolerance policy for these types of issues, whether you did it or didn't do it. So on the back end, you were able to show you didn't do it. You bring them the paper, and they're like, "Oh no, it doesn't matter that you didn't do it. We already replaced you, so it's a wrap." So it's very important that we just really kind of keep our heads, keep cool. 1 second of, a couple minutes of, anger could lead to, serious repercussions, like the University of Alabama player who's facing possibly the death penalty, right, for an interaction that he had with somebody that he didn't even know. So it's really important that we really think about things before we take these actions. There's another video going around, going viral, same thing. I don't really know what happened, but there's a video where on spring break, more March Madness, I guess, where you can see people in Miami, spring break. You can see a guy, he's walking past another guy, and he jumps in front of his friends and just shoots the guy until he unloads the clip, and the guy passes away, right? So he gets picked up 30, minutes later. He's running away from the scene with a gun in his hand. And well, the person who they arrested, to me, it didn't look like the same person. One was light skinned, one was dark skinned. But we don't know. So, but either way, there's a guy running from the scene with a gun in his hand. He gets picked up, and whether he did it or didn't do it, he's the suspect now. So he could potentially lose his freedom forever off of the situation as well. So it's just really important to just like make wise decisions, think about these things before you get into that position. And if you do, especially end up getting arrested, make sure you don't talk to the police. Pretty much don't do anything that you ever saw in the first 48. You know what I'm saying? So if they ask you what happened, if they ask you whatever, just say nothing. Say that you want to talk to a lawyer before you talk to them. They're going to make it seem like that's bad, but it's the best thing that you can do for you. It's the worst thing that you could do for their investigation. So really think about it. On the child support tip, going back to the Matt Barnes piece, also has big ramifications. If you don't pay your child support, you could lose your license. It could be suspended, and then you could even end up going to jail depending on what state you live in. So all of these things are things that most, you don't want to happen. So you have kids, you got to take care of them regardless of whether you wanted them or didn't want them, because the things that you could have did to prevent having them, you didn't do it, or it didn't work. Maybe you did it, but it didn't work. But whatever the case is, you don't want to get caught out here not paying your child support. It's not even a good look to even want to not pay your child support. So like, for whatever reason, if you can't afford your child support, you could go back to the court, show them that you can't afford it. And it's better for you to, try to seek for a modification than to just not pay. Again, going back to like, anytime you just ignore the court, it's not going to work out for you. So definitely don't do that. We got another story, another wild one. So there is a officer in, I believe this was in Oklahoma. Yeah, it was in Oklahoma. I want to try to show you this picture because this guy looks fried, but I'm having problems with my showing my screen. Okay, let's see. Why am I having this problem? Hold on. I don't know. Hold on for 1 second. Anyway, it's not gonna work for me. But in Oklahoma City, there was a sergeant who pulled over a captain So I believe a captain ranks over a sergeant. It was like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was suspected of a DUI. So, you know, luckily a lot of these officers are wearing body cams now, and the captain can be heard whispering to the sergeant to turn off the camera, and the sergeant's like, "I'm not turning off my camera," and they're having this conversation. So uh, I, I wish I could show you this video because it's a interesting clip to see the police, trying to get the police to show them a little love for on the Blue Lives Matter tip, and not getting that request. But anytime the police try to use their position to get any type of like benefits that are not afforded to the rest of us, they get in trouble for that. So the captain ended up being arrested and booked on charges for driving under the influence, and he's on administrative leave at this point. It looks like he's probably going to end up losing his job, but it's kind of like a funny little story. Luckily, nobody got hurt in Oklahoma City, but the cops are out here wilding as usual. So let's see. Got a couple more stories. I'm going to try to go through them, but unfortunately, I'm down in Miami. We have the video there for that other story. Yeah, that's the cop right there. I mean, I don't know if the video is going to play, but I mean, look at this dude. He looks like he's going to be convicted. I don't know if he blew, but you should never blow if the police ask you to. But that picture alone, if I'm on that jury, I'm like, yeah, that dude did it. He's drunk. I got my neck turned to the side because I can't figure out how to straighten up the picture. So I'm just going to do like this. I don't know if y'all remember back in the day, they had a Taco Bell commercial where everybody was on with neck to the side and it was like shooting free throws with Shaq on there. This kind of reminds me of that. But anyway, so in my home state of Florida, most people probably know him for bad reasons, but we have one of the worst governors in the country, if not the worst governor. The dude is a clown. And he's campaigning to be president by promoting all of these like really racist, really like homophobic, really bad laws that probably some of them will probably be found to be unconstitutional, but it's helping him to connect with the Republican base. They had a big thing, this whole like woke. We're trying to get rid of woke. They don't even know what woke means, but like they're trying to make woke a bad thing. They're trying to get rid of anything that has to do with diversity or critical race theory, pretty much because these things are they make white people feel bad. So it hurts their feelings that, history teaches about the horrible, deplorable things that their ancestors did that they benefited from. So, I mean, I was talking to my buddy the other day. If they paid reparations, then I think we could maybe stop talking about it. But until then, we're going to keep talking about it. But there's a bill, and basically, it's targeting all diversity, equity, inclusion on college campuses, so public colleges in Florida. So the bill would give the state's board of governors the ability to remove any major or minor that is based on or otherwise utilizes pedagogical methodology associated with critical theory. So it was passed by the House, and the Senate now must pass its own similar version of the bill, and then the governor would then sign it. So there's challenges to it. There's the civil rights activist groups and different people are going to file lawsuits right away about this bill. And one of the main things is they're going to say that it's too vague, because it is probably vague. I haven't read the entire bill, but it's the whole point is just to get the base riled up, and these people, hear about this in New Jersey and like, oh, I wish our governor would do those things. That's the type of leader we need. And now he's going around the country campaigning. So that's really what it's more about. They're saying that possibly it could also lead to like Black organizations on the campuses being banned, like the fraternities and the sororities and things like that. So anything multicultural, the student unions, LGBTQ studies and things like that. So we're going to keep an eye out for all of these crazy laws that are being passed in Florida and around the country in opposition to critical race theory or Black rights and things of that nature. And then last story before we close out, there was a cop in Miami who was found guilty of beating up Black tourists. He'll be sentenced in April. So his name is Kevin Perez. He was on trial for excessive force and was convicted of simple battery after kicking and punching Delante Crudup as he was laying on the floor of the Royal Palm Hotel with his hands behind his back. He's been suspended without pay. He could face up to a year in prison and a fine. And, there's a second victim, Sharif Cobb, was also beaten by this officer who was clearly abusing his badge. So luckily there are cameras in hotels, and the things that he was doing to these two young men were captured on video, and hopefully he is convicted. Well, he was convicted, but hopefully he is sentenced to the full year, and he has to spend time in prison with the people who I'm sure wouldn't take too kindly to the fact that he's a Black man beater. So anyway, happy that jury was able to convict, and they didn't say that he was just doing his job and was going to be able to get sovereign immunity. So that's the end of the show for tonight. A little bit shorter than the last episode, but we want to try to stay in like that 30 to 45 minute range. We don't want to take too long. We just want to be able to get that information out. And right now we're just trying to make sure that we kind of get a flow. Every week we're going to try to improve. So for everybody that's watching on the replay, we'll be back here on Thursday at 3 with some more stories. There's stuff that's happening every day. If you have any questions or anything, leave them in the comments, and we'll try to cover those stories. If you have any stories you want us to cover, leave them in the comments, and we'll be checking them. We'll be responding to you as well. We appreciate you taking that time to listen to Law and Hip Hop today, watch the Law and Hip Hop podcast, and we'll be back for another episode on Thursday. See you then.